You didn't click this by accident. Something in you is tired of reliving the same invisible patterns, the same heartbreak, the same silence, the same disappointments that keep looping through your life aren't random at all. They're echoes of something far older. In this video, you'll discover the hidden childhood trauma that keeps pulling you back into pain, and why breaking free starts not with force, but with finally understanding the vow you made long ago. Think about your life. How many times have you told yourself, this time will be different, only to find yourself circling back to the same outcome? At first, the new beginning feels alive, full of possibility. Your heart races when someone looks at you with interest. You allow yourself to believe in love again, or you pour your energy into a new project, convinced it will finally bring fulfillment. But then the familiar shadows creep in. A delayed text spirals you into anxiety. A moment of silence between you and someone you care for feels unbearable, heavier than words. A minor mistake at work triggers shame that gnaws at you for days, and you start to shrink, to second-guess, to silence yourself, until you are back in the same old story, giving too much, asking for too little, and feeling invisible in the very places where you long to be seen. This isn't just about romance, though relationships often reveal the wound most clearly. You see it in friendships too, where you give endlessly, but fear that if you ask for anything in return, the bond will break. You feel it at work, where no matter how much you achieve, you still sense that recognition slips through your fingers, leaving you restless and unsatisfied. You sense it even in your own body, tightness in the chest before intimacy, restlessness when life becomes too calm, an edge of distrust when someone says, "I love you," as if those words might carry hidden danger. Everywhere you turn, the theme repeats. You stretch yourself thin, you silence your needs, you bend until you break. All in the desperate hope that this time, finally, you will be loved without disappearing. And when it doesn't work, when the love fades, when the opportunity crumbles, when the recognition never comes, you do what so many sensitive, introspective souls do. You blame yourself. You tell yourself you are too much, too needy, too dramatic, too difficult to love. Or you swing to the opposite extreme, convincing yourself that you don't need anyone at all, that coldness is safer, that distance will protect you from disappointment. But underneath both masks, underneath the hypervigilant giver and the unreachable loner, lies the same wound, the deep inspoken belief that closeness will hurt you, and that if you let yourself be seen as you truly are, you won't survive what happens next. You may not call it trauma. You may not even think of it as pain. To you, it might just feel like the way things are, but the patterns tell the story you've been trying not to read. They repeat until you notice them. They ache until you finally admit that something is wrong beneath the surface. They whisper through anxiety, through emptiness, through the restless urge to prove yourself over and over again. And here is the hardest truth of all. Until you see the pattern for what it is, you will keep mistaking survival for personality. You will keep calling your shield your skin, and your wound your destiny. That is why this moment matters, because the wound is calling you. Not to shame you, not to break you, but to remind you that it has always been there, waiting to be seen, waiting to be healed. To truly understand why these invisible cycles keep repeating, we must go back. Not through logic, not through memory as you know it, but through the living imprint that your body still carries. There was a time early on when you reached out for love with open hands and an open heart. You didn't question whether you were worthy of it. You didn't bargain for it, perform for it, or overthink it. You simply needed it because every child does. And what you found may not have been enough. Perhaps love came in fragments, warm one moment, withdrawn the next. Perhaps it arrived laced with conditions. Be quiet, behave, succeed, don't cry, don't need too much. Or perhaps it didn't come at all, and the silence around you grew louder than any words ever could. In those moments, something inside you shifted forever. You may not remember the exact day or the exact words, but your body remembers the vow. A vow so quiet you didn't even know you had spoken it, and yet so powerful that it became the hidden script of your entire life. It might have sounded like, "I will not need again. I will protect myself. If love hurts, I'll stay distant. If I'm perfect, maybe they'll stay. If I disappear, maybe I won't be abandoned again. These were not flaws. They were brilliant survival strategies. A child cannot endure rejection or neglect over and over without building walls. And so you built them, not with bricks and mortar, but with silence, with perfectionism, with hypervigilance, with the art of pretending to be fine. And those walls, once built, did not crumble with time. They became part of you, shaping every single bond you would ever step into. This is why, when someone approaches you with kindness today, your body doesn't always relax. Instead, the old vow awakens. Your nervous system reads their closeness not as safety but as a potential threat. Your heart races, not only with excitement but with warning. You push them away before they can hurt you, or you cling so tightly that the bond cracks under the weight of your fear. Either way, the cycle repeats. Not because you are broken, not because you are unworthy, but because the child inside you is still keeping the vow, still holding the shield, still doing everything it knows to keep you safe. What looks like self-sabotage is actually loyalty. To the child you once were, to the pain you once endured, to the wisdom you once needed to survive. And here lies the hidden truth. The deepest trauma is not always the memory you recall, but the adaptation you learned so early and so thoroughly that you forgot it was even there. You forgot that your silence was once a shield. You forgot that your independence was once a cry for safety. You forgot that your perfectionism was once a bargain with love. These parts of you became so natural, so constant, that you began to confuse them with your identity. You said, "This is just who I am." Distant, cautious, hard to love, endlessly striving. But those words were never the truth of your being. They were the echo of a vow you made before you even knew what vows were. And so the wound does not live only in your memories. It lives in your reflexes, in your impulses, in your nervous system's instant reactions that you cannot explain. Why do you panic at silence? Why do you freeze when someone gets too close? Why do you exhaust yourself trying to be enough, even when no one is demanding it of you? These are not random quirks. They are the body's language, the forgotten child's language, still speaking through you. And every time you repeat the cycle, it is that child tugging at your sleeve, saying, "See me. Don't forget what I endured. Don't pretend the wound was never there." Yet here is the most important part. It was never your fault. You did not choose to be abandoned. You did not cause the conditional love. You did not create the silence that shaped you. And the vows you made, the walls, the perfectionism, the distance, were not weaknesses. They were brilliance. They were the proof that your body and soul did everything they could to keep you alive, to help you survive what was unbearable. The forgotten child within you was never broken. They were resourceful, determined, powerful in their own fragile way. And today, if you can hear this, if you can recognize yourself in these words, it means the vow is finally being revealed, not to shame you, but to free you. Because what was once survival has become limitation. What was once protection has become prison. And to name this is not to blame the child within you, it is to honor them. To say, "Thank you for keeping me alive. Thank you for building the walls when I needed them. But I am grown now. I can choose again. I no longer need to live by the vow." This is the moment where the hidden past begins to loosen its grip, where the old script is no longer invisible, where you stop confusing survival for destiny. You didn't click this by accident because the wound is calling you. And the reason it calls now, in this exact moment of your life, is because for the first time you may be strong enough to listen. Look closely at your life as it is now, and you will begin to notice the echoes of those childhood vows. In love, you may find yourself drawn again and again to people who are not fully available. Partners who seem warm at first but withdraw when you need them most. People who give just enough affection to ignite your hope, but never enough to make you feel secure. With them, you chase, you bend, you silence your truth. And even when you realize they cannot give you what you long for, something inside refuses to let go, as if letting go would confirm the ancient fear. I will always be left behind. This is not because you enjoy pain or because you do not know better. It is because your body learned long ago that love equals uncertainty, and so it keeps returning to the familiar pattern, hoping that this time it will end differently. The same vow echoes in your work. You may overextend yourself, taking on far more than is reasonable, carrying burdens that no one asked you to carry, hoping that through your performance finally you will be recognized. You tell yourself, if I achieve more, they will see me. If I prove myself, they will value me. Yet no matter how hard you try, recognition slips through your hands, leaving you restless and dissatisfied. And deep inside, you hear the whisper again, you are invisible, you are not enough. This is not simply about ambition or work ethic. It is the same wound, translated into another language, repeating itself in boardrooms and offices just as it once repeated itself in living rooms and kitchens. Even in friendships, the pattern carries its weight. You may be the one who listens endlessly, who gives, who holds space for everyone else. But when it comes to your own needs, you hesitate. You fear that asking for too much will push people away. You shrink your truth so you can remain the good friend, the reliable one, the one who never burdens others. And when loneliness creeps in, you blame yourself for being too sensitive, forgetting that this sensitivity was once your compass, guiding you toward what you needed but could not name. The forgotten child inside you still keeps the old promise, if I don't need, I can stay. If I stay useful, I will not be abandoned. Your body carries the impact as well. Anxiety may stir when intimacy grows too deep. Restlessness may rise in moments of calm, as though silence itself threatens to reveal the ache you've worked so hard to suppress. Tension gathers in your chest when someone says, I love you, not because those words are false, but because they awaken the memory of love that once wounded more than it healed. These are not just emotions, they are somatic imprints, living memories etched into your nervous system, reminding you of the vow. You may tell yourself, I should be past this by now. But healing does not follow the ticking of a clock. It follows the rhythm of readiness, and readiness is only arriving now, in this moment where awareness meets your willingness to face what has long been hidden. And when it doesn't work, when the relationship fails, the recognition doesn't come, the peace feels unbearable, you often blame yourself. You call yourself too much, too needy, too complicated, or you swing to the other extreme. You become cold, distant, unreachable, convincing yourself that you do not need anyone at all. But both of these reactions come from the same root. Both are strategies of survival born from the same vow. Closeness is unsafe. Need will hurt me. Distance will protect me. Beneath the mask of too much and the armor of too little is the same fragile truth. The fear that intimacy will break you, and the belief that if you are hurt again, you will not survive it. And so the cycle continues, not as a memory you consciously replay, but as a rhythm beating beneath your choices. You wake up inside it every day, wondering why relationships feel repetitive, why your heart feels restless, why peace feels foreign. Yet here is the moment of recognition. These patterns are not curses, and you are not weak for repeating them. They are the child's vows, still alive, still doing their work. And if these words mirror your story, then let it be spoken. Share below what part resonates most with you. By naming it, you break the silence. By giving it voice, you remind yourself you are no longer alone in this cycle. Others are walking this same path, and your story may be the mirror someone else has been waiting for. If you follow the trail of these patterns back far enough, something surprising begins to emerge. The very behaviors you condemn yourself for today, the shutting down, the pulling away, the silence, the distance, were once the exact strategies that saved you. What looks like sabotage in your adult life was once brilliance in the child's world. Because the truth is, no child can survive repeated rejection, conditional love, or the terror of abandonment without creating a shield. And so you crafted one, not out of weakness, but out of sacred instinct. You swore to yourself quietly, I will not need too much. I will not cry too loudly. I will not let love hurt me again. These were not conscious decisions, but spells cast in desperation, ancient agreements made between your soul and your survival. Think of it this way. When a storm raged outside, you built a shelter. It may have been small, cramped, and dark, but inside it, you survived. The storm has long since passed, but the shelter remains, and now you mistake its walls for the edges of your identity. You think you are cold, distant, or unworthy of love, when in truth you are none of these things. You are simply living in a house you built during the storm, forgetting that the sun has already returned. The paradox lies here. What once saved you now restricts you. What once gave you life now keeps you from living fully. It is not failure. It is the natural weight of survival carried past its time. There is a strange loyalty in these patterns, too. Every time you push someone away, every time you shrink from kindness, every time you sabotage closeness, you are not betraying yourself. You are honoring the vow of the child who once promised never to be hurt again. This is why you cannot simply get over it, why affirmations and quick fixes often fall flat. You are not fighting a bad habit, you are breaking a sacred oath to the younger you. And until you see that, you will confuse loyalty with weakness, sabotage with failure. But the moment you name it for what it is, an old spell, you gain the power to decide if it still serves you. Imagine carrying an umbrella long after the rain has stopped. At first it feels protective, but over time it becomes heavy, awkward, unnecessary. You forget to look up and notice that the clouds have broken, that the world has shifted, that safety is possible now in ways it wasn't before. This is what these childhood vows are like. Umbrellas under a clear sky, doors locked against dangers that are no longer outside, chains clutched tightly even as the key has always been in your hand. The tragedy is not that you carry them. The tragedy is that you mistake them for who you are. And yet, within this paradox lies your doorway. Because once you understand that what you thought was weakness is actually survival, compassion enters. You stop blaming yourself for being guarded, for overthinking, for pushing people away. You begin to see these traits not as proof of failure, but as evidence of how brilliantly you endured. And that compassion begins to soften the edges of the spell. You no longer need to fight the walls or tear them down by force. Instead, you notice that some of them are already crumbling, because the purpose they once served has expired. Healing does not begin with demolition, it begins with recognition. This is where the hidden power of paradox reveals itself. You realize that the same vow that once kept you alive is the very place where transformation can occur. By honoring the child who created it, you release yourself from the need to keep repeating it. By thanking the shield, you begin to set it down. And in that moment, the cycle loosens. The rhythm that bound you begins to shift. You step out of the cramped shelter into the wider sky. And you finally see, you were never broken, never cursed, never doomed to repeat the same hurt forever. You were simply carrying a spell that did its job too well. Once you see the spell for what it is, the question arises, if survival made you who you weren't, then who were you always meant to be? Healing is not about erasing the past or pretending the hurt never happened. It is about remembering the self that existed before the vows, before the silence, before the walls were built. That self is not gone. It waits like a flame buried under ashes, needing only breath to awaken. And this is the reframe. If you had the power to endure by becoming less of yourself, then you have the same power now to heal by becoming more of yourself. The strength that created the shield can just as easily dismantle it. The loyalty that once kept you closed can now keep you open. Survival and healing are not separate. They are two expressions of the same resilience. This begins not with grand gestures, but with the smallest choices. To let your shoulders drop when love feels near instead of tightening. To pause before silencing your needs and whisper them instead. To allow kindness to land without brushing it off with a joke. These are not acts of weakness. They are rewiring moments. Every time you do this, your body learns. Tenderness does not always mean danger. Closeness does not always mean pain. Over time, the nervous system begins to trust what the mind already longs for. That it is possible to be safe and loved at once. Healing is not about speed, it is about repetition. And every repetition is a reminder. I am not who I became in the storm. I am who I was before it. And here lies a deeper truth. Your patterns of pushing love away, of attracting pain, of repeating cycles are tied to another wound so ancient it often hides beneath them all. The wound of never feeling enough. Because if you believe deep down that who you are is insufficient, then no love can be trusted, no closeness can feel safe, no success can bring peace. This is why the two wounds travel together. One says, "I cannot be loved safely," and the other whispers, "I do not deserve to be loved at all." Together, they create exhaustion, a constant proving, a constant retreat. But both have the same root, a forgotten child who needed to survive. That is why I created another teaching: 5 childhood patterns that create toxic relationships. It is not just an extension of this journey, it is the next doorway. Because the pattern of attracting those who hurt you cannot be fully understood without seeing the hidden vows that shaped your very way of loving. In that video, I explore how childhood wounds weave themselves into every connection, why shame and abandonment repeat, and how what feels like just your personality is often a survival script waiting to be rewritten. If this video has been the mirror showing you why the same cycle repeats, the next is the lantern that reveals the path beyond it. The link is in the description. Step through when you are ready, not because you must, but because your soul will know when it is time. But even before you cross that threshold, know this: what feels like emptiness inside you is not proof that you are broken, it is proof of your endurance. That hollow space is where all the unspoken words, unfelt emotions, and unreceived love have been waiting. And when you begin to listen, when you begin to feel, that space does not remain hollow. It begins to fill, not with external validation, not with temporary highs, but with presence, your own. The same way you once learned to numb, you can learn to awaken. The same way you once silenced your needs, you can learn to honor them. What was once absence becomes room for return. Every step of healing is an act of courage, not because it is loud, but because it is quiet. The courage to remain when you want to flee. The courage to soften when you want to harden. The courage to say yes when the vow inside still screams no. This courage is not built overnight, it is built moment by moment. But with each moment, you prove to yourself that the storm is over, that you are no longer the child holding the spell, but the adult with the choice. And each time you choose presence over absence, connection over retreat, compassion over shame, you rewrite the code of your survival into the code of your becoming. And so the reframe is simple, though never easy: you were never broken. You were hidden. You were never unworthy. You were waiting. And the fact that you are here now, listening, proves that the waiting is ending. The wound is not your enemy, it is your invitation. The cycle is not your curse, it is your initiation. And the same way the spell was once cast without your consent, it can now be undone with your awareness. What was survival yesterday can be freedom today. The moment you realize the wound has been calling you, not to shame you but to guide you back, something shifts deep inside. You begin to sense that healing is not about creating a new self, but about uncovering the self who has been waiting beneath the rubble of survival. That self was never erased, only hidden behind vows, masks, and walls. When you start to touch even the edges of this truth, a different kind of strength rises in you. The strength of one who no longer runs from pain, but listens to it. The wound is not a life sentence, it is an invitation. It is your inner compass pointing you home. And what does home mean in this language of the soul? Not the perfect relationship, not the flawless career, not the endless applause of others. Home is that moment when you no longer abandon yourself, when the silence inside no longer feels like emptiness, but like space, when your tears are no longer proof of weakness but of aliveness, when you can stand in the presence of another, not shrinking, not pretending, not performing, just being. This is what becoming whole looks like. Not erasing the cracks but letting the light pour through them. Not rejecting your scars, but seeing them as constellations that tell your story. The path forward is not about force, but about permission. To permit yourself to be tender without apology. To permit yourself to rest without guilt. To permit yourself to hope, even if hope once betrayed you. Every permission you grant to yourself loosens another chain. And slowly, what felt like survival begins to feel like freedom. Freedom to breathe without waiting for the next blow. Freedom to love without bracing for loss. Freedom to exist without bargaining for worth. This is the quiet revolution of healing. It does not scream, but it transforms everything. And here is what you must carry. You were never broken. The wound may have convinced you otherwise, but the wound lies. It told you that you were too much, not enough, unlovable. But those were echoes of absence, not the truth of your being. The truth is that you are tender and strong, fragile and resilient, flawed and luminous all at once. The truth is that nothing about you was ever a mistake. Even your patterns, even your defenses, even your silence were all love in disguise. Love for the child who needed protection. Love for the self who could not endure otherwise. And if you can love yourself for surviving, then you can love yourself for living. As this journey closes, let these words echo inside you. You were always more than the wound. You were always more than the cycle, more than the silence, more than the pain. You are the one who noticed, the one who listened, the one who dared to face what others run from. That alone proves your readiness. That alone proves your strength. Healing is not about perfection, it is about presence. And you, right here, are present. That is where the transformation begins. That is where it always begins. If these words found you, it was never by chance. They found you because the wound is calling, and you are ready to answer. Stay close, subscribe, so you do not miss the next step in this healing journey. Not as another obligation, not as another performance, but as a promise to yourself that you will keep listening. Your inner child will keep speaking, and together we will walk the path back, not to who you were told to be, but to who you truly are. You are not broken, you are becoming whole. You are not lost, you are returning home. And as you breathe these words in, remember, the wound is not the end of your story. It is the place where your story finally begins.